And people would be talking about, well, yeah, it's different now. We don't have to go up in the balcony. And that was one of the experiences that I find out that all the counties had that dealt with the Jim Crow days. And I remember the school bus coming, well, not the school bus, but the Greyhounds coming, and we would get on them and ride to Wilkesboro sometimes, or different places. And so during my time, basically, because of Rosa Parks, we did not have to sit in the back. We could sit anywhere that we wanted to. And I guess the Jim Crow era of the bathrooms and the colored signs, and I know at the park, Smooth Park, I was told later on that blacks could only go a certain one day a week, and there was, times that I guess you had to go to the back of the restaurants or go get your food from a side door, but I didn't really experience that. I was told, well, these are places that you really don't want to go, but basically I came along as that change was in place, and so it was the time during the 50s and 60s that really things were changing, and I call myself a product of integration because of it.
Ku Klux Klan.
Well, I remember, I guess, after I joined the Navy, the 1979 shooting in Greensboro. And so I was getting out, and I was moving to Greensboro, and all the guys said, "Now that's where you want to go live?" And I said, "Well, there's a woman down there I hope to marry, But I do remember looking at some of the papers while I was in service that I would get, and it would have a picture where the Klan came to Wilkesboro and they marched. I've never seen the Klan marching, but I do have 7 older brothers, and I've been told of experiences where they were out riding, and they may have seen the crosses burning or come up on a stop where the Klan was having different rallies and things. So
I want your honest opinion of this. Do you think if they'd have taken away the video camera that a lot of them guys would have shown up, the Ku Klux Klan people?
I don't know if they would have shown up. You talking about the Greensboro?
Well,
or
anywhere. You think they were going for the publicity they could get on TV? And
Well, I think that some of them would have did play to that, but it was such I guess it was such a thing whenever the Klan, the history of them, when you look at the history that they started after the Civil War, and then they wanted to keep the blacks as close to slaves as they could, and then they murdered people, and they burnt the churches, and they whipped people and they hung them. And so when you look at the body of it, and even the good white people who were not in the Klan, that they was forced to sit back, and they couldn't really do things against them, and without them being whooped or beaten, then it was something that the U.S. government had to get involved with, and if they had not, then it would have really been an underground secret organization that would have really lasted a lot longer and been more effective than it has been in the past.
Okay. Struggles.
Well, I guess struggles. Well, I grew up on a farm, sorta, and so I remember we had a well, and we had a spring, and we carried water, and we had crops to put out and to hoe and to weed and to gather up, and so it wasn't a very easy childhood, but it was fun because there was always a lot of us, and we could make play of a lot of different things, and we always had plenty of food, and we walked everywhere, and so it was somewhat of a struggle because I guess there were so many of us.
Your daddy ever paddled you when you was a young boy?
Well, he did, but he didn't have to do it much. And if one of us messed up, then the other ones, hey, after they saw that one get his paddling, then it would encourage you not to do the same thing, not to mess up.
Okay, we talked about sports. Music?
Okay. Well, music, I grew up in a church where they sung the old spirituals. And even to this day, I love going, back home to the church and hearing the hymns and the spirituals and the gospel songs. And it's wonderful to hear the songs lined in notes. And then also, as we integrated the schools, we learned more about the folk songs. And we heard, the Tom Dooley songs as well as, the Paul Bunyans and all that. And I used to be in the course at Wilkes Central and the advanced course. And so music's always been part of our family. Yes.
Important issues as you view them today?
Well, I guess the most important thing is the violence in the schools. That really concerns me because, I never would have imagined when I was in school that someone would come to school with a gun and shoot someone. Also, the gang violence that really concerns me, and especially among African Americans, because where I live now, there's just so much of that going on, and it's such a destructive form, I guess, of life in our society. But I guess a lot of issues that I look at, we have, I guess, the political arena. We got a war going on, and it used to be days past during the Vietnam War or other wars, people would march or they would say, hey, that this war should not go on. And so now we're a little more subtle with it. And so we just have to look at, the reason that we're there and, how things are going to be approached in the next administration. And the gasoline issue really concerns me now because gasoline was real cheap when I was coming along, but now it's just hard, just for people to, and I know people on fixed incomes have to decide on gas or food or staying at home, and so with gasoline being so high, it's just hard to go and do a lot of things that we used to take for granted.
5 minutes there. I got about 5 minutes.
Okay. Important people besides your daddy. Talk about him too.
Okay, important people. My mother, she was very instrumental in talking to me about my family and who I was and what I looked like and how I should act. And she was very, very instrumental there. And a lot of ministers, with my father being a minister, then I got to meet a lot of ministers and talk with them, and they would get me to the side from time to time, and they would say, well, hey, how you doing? How your father doing? They'd ask me a few questions, and I've always been, I guess, I always respected the ministry, and so I've always liked that. But my former coaches, football, basketball, they have really been important. And
Name those for me.
Red Hoffman was the football coach, and even John Barber, he was one of my baseball coaches early in school. And Ralph Steele, and there was Mr. Galifianakis who used to coach me, and Gross. used to coach me also. But these were important individuals in my life and time.
Do you have any, like memories of some of these old mean chiefs in the Navy? Have you found any important, were any people in there to help you in the
Yeah.
military?
Yeah, we had the XO. He was very good, and I cannot remember his name, but I did have some good people in the Navy that was trying to give me guidance and tell me to hey, get out. If once you leave here, do something with yourself. Go out and get you a good job and education.
How many years did you serve?
3 years active and 3 years reserve.
So you think that really helped you
Oh yes,
get
yeah,
more rounded
right.
in life?
It did. It really made me appreciate what my parents were telling me and training me to do. But once I got there, then, hey, you will do this, you will do that. You've got to fold your clothes this way. You got to pass inspection. And, today's Friday, but at 0600 Monday, you will be across the country and, you'll be at this place. And, so it really made me realize the difference between boys and men and being responsible.
One more question about, you're talking about going to the Liberty Theater. Did you ever feel the wrath of the hand from the forehead? Remember?
I don't think I did, but there was a little lady up in Boomer, and her name was Eva German.
Oh.
And she would take a ruler and put your hand out there and hit your hand, but she was just very firm, and she was a wonderful woman.
Welcome to the club. I've met her in my younger days. Very good. That's about all, unless you think of something. We talk about parts. Okay. You talk, and then I'll ask you one more thing.
Okay, well, I always wanted to go to Lincoln Heights, and so this a project that I still continue to try to work with to this day to help keep that history going and the accomplishments that were made there. And so that's a wonderful thing. And being a historian and a genealogist, then there's a history of the slave family and of the slave owner's family that we've been working real well with, the Carlton family. So hopefully one day we can chart those plantations and find out exactly where the slave cabins were and where the crops were brought in, and and get into the records to find out exactly where the slaves were purchased at and different things like that, because not only the Carlton, but there was the Howell plantation and the Barnes plantation, Sainer plantation. So these are things that I'm trying to research now.
You're talking about Lewis Sainer?
Yes. Lewis Sainer. Okay.
Well, you basically sort of answered what I was going to have you to say something about what you're doing, the thing that I videotaped you about. You want to?
Oh, yes.
A little bit on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because whenever I was coming up in school, there was not that much African American history. I started a mobile Black History Museum within our active workshops to go to the schools, churches, community centers to teach African American history and race relations. And basically, it is like a trip down memory lane for the seniors, but it's also an opportunity for the students to see things that their parents and grandparents and children and teachers have told them about during the years, and we carry the actual artifacts to the schools and churches and places where they can actually see the Jim Crow signs and different artifacts. And so I've been fortunate enough to win the Nancy Susan Reynolds Award for Race Relations in 2003, which is considered the Nobel Peace Prize in the nonprofit sector. And then in 2007, I won the ECHO Award from the Winston-Salem Foundation for race relations. And so it's just a wonderful thing that I've been doing, and hopefully in my retirement from my regular job, I'll be doing this full time.
Tell us about that. Is this off camera?